So 2 weeks ago I started this and well, had to take a little break. Had some other stuff I had to take care of, but I have to replace the crank pulley on this 2006 Corvette, which is not fun. You can see I've already gotten rid of the alternator that was sitting right there, along with the bracket and the power steering pump. Didn't really have to take the power steering pump out, but I did have a power steering pump hose leak. So I went ahead and took it out anyway just to replace it. And now I've already rotated the steering shaft. So what I have to do now is I'm just going to basically push it out of the car, and that'll give me enough room to take that crank pulley off. But first I have to take the starter off, which I actually just put that on about 3 months ago because the one that was on here went out, and now I have to take it off again. So actually the reason I have to take that off is because I have to put this flywheel locking tool in its place. So whenever I go to unbolt this crank pulley, the motor doesn't spin over, which I actually have this thing in gear right now, and even with the car in gear, the motor still spins over. So yeah, I'm going to put that in. The crank pulley that I'm replacing it with is the Summit Racing pulley. Now this is actually, it actually has a couple extra ribs on here. That's in case I want to put a supercharger on it later down the road, which I'm kind of thinking about doing. I don't know, we'll see. They are expensive. But if I do it, I'm going to have to put a cam and intake and throttle body, and yeah, I'm gonna have to go down that road. So I don't want to just put a supercharger in it and then not put a cam in it, because that would suck. But yeah, in case I do go down that road, I went ahead and bought this thing. I got a 160-degree thermostat I'm gonna put in there as well. And here's my new seal. I'd be stupid not to put a new seal in there, and the ARP bolt is going to go in there. So I'm going to go ahead and get that starter off. Alright, so I got the starter out, and I put this flywheel locking tool in there, and it looks like it's going to work pretty good. I just hope the welds will hold up. Alright, just to give you a rough idea what I did, I just kind of pulled the steering shaft out of the car as far as it'll go. And then I just basically bent the arm up out of the way, because the gearbox down there, the steering shaft, won't actually come out. So as long as that arm stays up there like that, which I'll probably zip tie it, but I don't think I'll have to, should be good. Alright, so the bolt is out, and here it is right here. This thing was super tight. I actually thought this thing might have had left-hand threads on it for a minute. It was so tight. I actually used an impact that's rated at 400 foot-pounds, and that didn't even budge it. So I actually heated it up for a couple minutes with a torch, and I put this breaker bar on it along with a jack handle, which gave me about 3 feet roughly, maybe a little bit shorter. And even with that on there, it was moving the entire motor, and I was just kind of jerking it, and it finally cracked loose. But once it cracked loose, it was really easy to take off. So this is a one-time use bolt only, just so everybody knows. I think they call it a torque to yield bolt. So I don't plan on using that thing anyway, because I have an ARP bolt. So I'm going to go ahead and put the crank pulley puller on here and yank this sucker off. Alright guys, so here's basically the setup that I got going on. Sorry if the sway bar's in the way, but this is the puller that I'm using. It's an Aries harmonic balancer puller set. Got this off of Amazon, and it's working like a charm. So it's about halfway off now. And let's see if I can't position this GoPro somewhere better. There it is. It's off. Whoa! Camera's going crazy. Sorry about that. Alright. Alright, so there it is. That's basically how I had it rigged up. And this kit came with a whole bunch of different length bars, and I actually used the longest one. So yeah, this puller's definitely did a good job. It came off pretty easy. But before I put the new one on, I need to go ahead and replace the crank seal. Alright, so I didn't get this on camera, but I'm going to go ahead and recreate it. Next step is to get this seal out of here. I tried a couple different things like a screwdriver and pliers and whatever, but I went to the store real quick, picked up this $8 seal puller, and basically what I did is I just stuck the hook in here and it basically just pops right out. Makes life a lot easier. So that is that. So I'm going to go ahead and put the new seal in. Alright, so I got the new seal in there, and I used some of this ultra gray. I put around the edges, wiped off the excess, and I did have to kind of hammer it in. It pushed in about halfway, but I used a really big socket. I just held it up there like that and then tapped it in there with a hammer. Went in there pretty easy. So now the next step for me to do is I have the new harmonic balancer actually inside the oven right now, preheated at 250 degrees, and I'm going to leave it in there for about 20 to 30 minutes, somewhere in there, and then I'm going to come back and put it on. Alright, so I'm going to give you the rundown of what I did because the GoPro was just in the way and I didn't film any of it, but I put the crank pulley in there in the oven at 250 degrees. I preheated the oven before I put it in there. I left it in there for 25 minutes, and while it was in there cooking, I came out here and I basically put like a light coat of oil on that seal, on that front seal, and then I used my welding gloves to take the crank pulley out of the oven, and I put a little bit of oil inside the pulley snout and a little bit of oil on the crankshaft snout also, and basically set it on there. It wouldn't really go on there a whole lot, but it would go on there just enough to where it wouldn't fall off. And then I just used a really big socket and a dead blow hammer and kind of lightly tapped it on just enough so I could get enough threads inside the crankshaft so I could start pressing it on with the stock bolt. So once it was all the way on there, I used the stock bolt and I torqued it to, I can't remember exactly, I have it written down somewhere, but I think it was right around 220 foot-pounds, I think. And then I took it out and then I installed the ARP. Now with the ARP bolt, I actually put some red Loctite on the beginning of the threads, about halfway. And then the other half, I used the ARP lubricant that came with it. And then I torqued it down to 235, I think. I might be wrong on that. But that's what I torqued it down to, and it's pretty much straight. And I did roughly put the serpentine belt on it. I can't put it all the way because obviously I'm missing the power steering pump up there, but everything's lining up with the pulley that's up there and the water pump and obviously the crank pulley, and the air conditioning belt is lining up too. I just have to put that back on. Alright, so the rest of it I'm not going to film because it's just simple stuff. Like I have to put the fans back in. I'm still going to put the 160 degree thermostat back in. That's super easy to do. And then also I have to, the steering rack is still hanging out the car, so I obviously got to put that back in there. And then hook up the power steering pump and alternator and put the belt on. Stuff like that, just simple stuff. I will say though that probably the biggest pain in the ass about this was getting off those two power steering pump lines that go to the steering rack. That was probably the worst part about it. And but everything else was fairly straightforward and not too complicated. It's just kind of time consuming because you got to take apart so much stuff just to get to one thing. That's I guess that's the downside of owning a Corvette. Everything is all crammed in all crammed together. But anyway, that's pretty much going to do it. I should have this wrapped up in a few hours. So as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one.